This must be a terrific contrast from your previous film, Elephant Man.
It's a giant contrast in some ways, way more time, way more people, and the hardest thing I've ever done.
This is probably the worst thing that's being released this Christmas. I really, really hated the film. In the movie, somebody talks about a device that is going to amplify the pain of the people who were put in it. For me, that's what the film did.
I believe that you've got to tune into the material and be true to that and concentrate on getting that on the screen. And money doesn't have a lot to do with that.
It's physically ugly. It contains at least a dozen gory, gross-out scenes. Some of its special effects are cheap, surprisingly cheap, because this film cost a reported $40 to $45 million, and its story is confusing beyond belief.
When you have a success, you have more freedom in this business, and so I might get offered those things.
Just as an example of a totally misguided project, I think it deserves a little niche of its own in the Cinematic Hall of Fame.
Thumbs down on the sci-fi epic Dune.
And like I said, it's the hardest thing I ever did. And what happens to it now is not up to me, it's up to the people. I just hope for the best.
Dune is a film that has always fascinated me. Before I had even jumped into the illustrious filmography of David Lynch, I knew of Dune and its reputation. This was a film that failed on every level, that proved that the novel was indeed unfilmable, that lost the studio millions and broke its director's heart so badly that he tried to strike his name from the credits. Then, in 2021, Denis Villeneuve released his own adaptation of the classic sci-fi novel. This time, however, Dune was received with open arms by critics, audiences, and award circles. People said that Villeneuve had pulled off what no one had been able to do up to that point, and managed to turn Dune from a wordy sci-fi novel into an accessible, intelligent blockbuster. When I saw the film myself, however, I didn't feel quite as strongly about it. Sure, on a technical level, the film is an absolute marvel, with lush production design, gorgeous costume work, top-notch sound design, and breathtaking visual effects. But despite all this, I left Dune, ironically, with a dry taste in my mouth. The characters felt stiff, the world stunning to look at, but empty. And for the next few months I became baffled by the near unanimous praise the film was receiving. It was at this time that a small seed in my brain began sprouting, leading me in the direction of the other Dune. Yes, that one. The one we don't talk about. The one we keep locked away. The one we can surely set ablaze and never have to worry about again now that Denis has given us the definitive version. It would take me 2.5 years to finally get around to watching David Lynch's Dune. In the interim years, I became a huge Lynch fan. Firstly through his and Mark Frost's genre-defining and beautifully strange television series Twin Peaks. Then his films, Mulholland Drive, Fire Walk With Me, Blue Velvet, and Eraserhead to name a few. And finally, through interviews with the man himself. I can't tell you how many times I've watched compilation videos on YouTube assembling clips of his funniest moments. And as for Dune, I dipped my toe into the sand for a while by watching the film on mute while drinking and listening to music with my friends whenever they'd be in my house. It was a unique way to experience the film for the first time, and I became transfixed by the film's huge visual swings. Why is Kyle MacLachlan holding a pug? What is going on with this big space door that has a frame around it? Who is this weird bug creature? My questions were endless, and I began to wonder, is this the Dune film for me? As I waited for the right moment to finally sit down and find the answer for myself, I began developing a strange fondness for this film that I hadn't even really seen yet. It felt a bit like the older brother that never amounted to much in life despite having huge potential. The brother that still lived at home and maintained all their creative abilities, but who was now being overshadowed by their younger sibling who was achieving the things they never could. I had to know, was my assessment of this film right? Was it the forgotten gem in Lynch's body of work that deserved to be reclaimed for the masterpiece that it truly was? Or was it, as its reputation had suggested for so many years, merely an ambitious and expensive flop? It was time I heard the punchline of this joke for myself.
Coming soon to home video.
Know then that it is the year 10,191. In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice exists on only one planet in the entire universe. The planet is Arrakis, also known as...
The first scene we are treated to in Dune following the opening credits immediately sets the stage for what is to follow and tells us where Lynch's focus really is. The beautiful royal setting of Emperor Shaddam IV's palace is brutally interrupted by a group of body-bag-clad henchmen wheeling in a truly stomach-churning creature encased in a huge orange box. The camera delights in highlighting every aspect of this strange beast, from its flappy mouth to its weathered skin. The scene establishes the internal stakes of the film in relation to the Atreides and Harkonnen families, but more importantly acts as the first indication of what sets this film apart from the Denis version. In Villeneuve's film, even the most hideous parts of the Dune universe have an impressive beauty to them. Stellan Skarsgård's Baron Harkonnen erupts from his tank of black goop and rises to the top of the frame, allowing the audience to bask in the brilliant makeup work and cinematography. In Lynch's Dune, the ugliness is just ugly. There is a wonderful overlap between the director's flair for creating uncanny physical abominations and a lack of visual refinery inherent in this era of big-budget studio filmmaking. To put it bluntly, Lynch's Dune is not a film you could watch while eating your dinner. One of the areas of the film that received the most criticism at the time of its release was its special effects. There are a number of instances in the film where such criticisms can be understood. One particular moment sees Paul riding the huge sandworm Shai-Hulud alongside his pal Stilgar, and the blue screen background is wholly unconvincing. An earlier moment in the film sees Paul fight his mentor Gurney Halleck in a training session that features the now infamous blocky guard effects that completely obscure the fight and make for a baffling watch. These effects absolutely do not hold up. However, there are just as many that I can't help but have an affinity for. The space folding section of the film, which illustrates how travel works in this universe, is an absolute visual delight. The matte painting work on display here is gorgeous, especially when the huge Atreides ship leaves their home planet Caladan. The various spaceships that approach the planets throughout this scene are also a delight, reminding me of Douglas Trumbull's iconic work on 2001: A Space Odyssey. Even an often mocked moment where the strange bug creature floats up towards a rectangular box of light in a way that looks reminiscent of dragging an asset to a different point on the screen in a modern editing suite makes me smile. These effects, which invoke in me a feeling of the verisimilitude of the film just about being held together, are crucial in understanding the strange appeal of this film. In many ways, they are a precursor to the kind of effects work that Lynch would so expertly use in his and Mark Frost's acclaimed 2017 revival of Twin Peaks. The effects in that series are some of my absolute favourites of all time, and opened my mind to the possibilities of visual effects as more than just tools for recreating our own world in a digital manner. The current state of VFX, with artists being pulled in all different directions by demanding studio execs and producers who don't know the intricacies of the art form, resulting in subpar work, also acts in Dune's favour. What was once thought of as a failure to wow audiences in the same way that the recent effects pictures of Lucas and Spielberg at the time did, is now a charming relic of the early digital effects age. Where the real problems with Lynch's Dune begin to rear their head is in the film's final hour. Here, everything comes crashing down in glorious fashion as the weight of trying to adapt Herbert's mammoth novel into a 2-hour, 15-minute film proves simply too much. As quickly as Paul meets the mysterious Fremen, he is welcomed into the fold with open arms as their messiah. No questions asked. The woman of Paul's dreams, played by Sean Young, 2 years removed from her excellent performance in Blade Runner, is reduced to a glorified extra whose only role is to immediately fall head over heels in love with the Lisan al-Gaib. The complexity of Paul's position as the supposed savior of Arrakis is never put into question at all here. He is simply presented as a classic, morally good action hero. It's a shame that the producers didn't have the foresight to split the book into 2 films as would be done many decades later. Dune very much could have been the grown-up answer to Star Wars, as was hoped it would be at the time. However, as it stands, I can't help but like this very peculiar anomaly. When watching Dune, it is almost like peering into an alternate universe where David Lynch did in fact take up directing duties on Return of the Jedi, as he was so infamously rumoured to do. I'm glad, though, that in some ways the reaction to this film steered him on a different course, one much closer to his roots as the weirdo who brought the world Eraserhead. If Dune had been a success and Lynch suddenly heralded as the next Spielberg, Zemeckis or Lucas, I fear for what would have become of his career. I have a feeling though that he still would have eventually course corrected, and things would not look too dissimilar to how they do now.
Newsweek calls Dune rich, spellbinding. USA Today calls Dune compelling, brilliant, an oasis for the imagination.
Today, David Lynch's 1984 adaptation of Dune has officially achieved cult status. Lynch himself remains quite removed and despondent about the project whenever asked about it in interviews, which is a shame because it more than has its merits. Personally, I'm happy that I finally gave this film my time, and despite everything, the occasional shonky effect, the rushed second hour, the lack of final cut on the project for Lynch, I'm glad that Dune exists.
You know, when I was trying to get Dave to direct Jedi, I showed him the concept art for the prequels. If you ask me, he secretly wanted to direct one of those instead. When I saw Dune, I thought, he may have gone too far in a few places.